Alright, geometry practice, parallel lines and angle pairs. First one says if the measure of angle 7 is 100. Well, originally they tell us that L is parallel to M. If L is parallel to M, then all of those angle relationships are going to have special relationships. They're going to have corresponding angles congruent, alternate exterior angles congruent, consecutive interior angles are supplementary, and alternate exterior angles are congruent. So we're looking for those angle pairs. So the first one says the measure of angle 7 is 100. Well, to find the measure of angle 3, we have to identify what 7 and 3 are. 7 and 3 are inside the cusps of our Z. And 7 and 3 form alternate interior angles. And when parallel lines form alternate interior angles, then alternate interior angles are congruent. So 7 is 100 degrees, then angle 3 is 100 degrees as well. Number 2, measure of angle 7 is 95. We want to find the measure of angle 6. Well, what kind of angle pair do 7 and 6 form? 7 and 6 form that C for consecutive and then the I for interior. So 7 and 6 are consecutive interior angles. And if you recall, consecutive interior angles are not congruent. They're the only ones that are not congruent. They're going to have a sum of 180 degrees. So to find angle 6, we would subtract 95 degrees from our possible 180, and we would get 85 degrees. So the measure of angle 6 is 85 degrees. Number 3 gives us angle 1 is 120 degrees. So in order to find out the measure of angle 5, we're going to identify its angle relationship, and they're called alternate exterior angles. And when alternate exterior angles are formed by parallel lines, which it says is in our instructions, then alternate exterior angles are congruent. So if angle 1 is 120, then angle 5 is also 120. Number 5, measure of angle 3 is 140. Find the measure of angle 8. Well, angle 3 and angle 8 don't have a parallel line relationship. What we can do is figure out angle 8 by using one of our other relationships to get there. So kind of like a map, taking one direction to the next. So if angle 3 is 140, let's find an angle that's congruent to that. Well, I noticed that angle 3 and angle 1 are corresponding angles. And corresponding angles are congruent when the lines that form them are parallel. So now that I know angle 1 is 140, I know that angle 1 and angle 8 form a linear pair. A linear pair is a pair of angles that sits on a straight line. 1, 2, pair of angles that sit on a straight line, whose sum is 180 degrees. So now that I've found angle 1 is 140, I can take my 140 and subtract it from 180 degrees, and I would get a total of 40 degrees. If you didn't feel comfortable with that, we could use the angle 3 again and find a different angle relationship. I could use alternate interior angles are congruent. So that would make angle 7 140 degrees. And if angle 7 is 140 degrees, then once again, angle 7 and angle 8 are going to form a linear pair. So angle 8 would still be 40 degrees. Number 6 says that if the measure of angle 4 is 30, find the measure of angle 1. Well, what kind of angle relationship do 4 and 1 hold? Well, they don't hold any. So we have to once again figure out how to get there. So I notice once again that angle 4 and angle 2 are corresponding. And when parallel lines form corresponding angles, then corresponding angles are congruent. So once again, angle 2 and angle 1 are going to form a linear pair. Linear pair is a pair of angles that sit on a straight line, and they have a sum of 180 degrees. So if angle 2 is 30, then angle 1 would be 30 minus, or 180 minus 30. So angle 1 would have a sum of 150. If you weren't comfortable with that, we could do it another way. You have angle 4 was 30. What if I was looking for angle 8 to get to angle 1? Well, angle 4 and angle 8 are alternate exterior, so they'd be congruent as well. And once again, angle 1 and angle 8 form a linear pair who have a sum of 180. So 180 minus 30 gives me 150. So you use your other angle relationships to figure out some of the angle relationships that don't have names. So the measure of angle 1 in this one was 150. Okay, number 1 says to give the name for angle 1 and 2 and then find the measures of each. Well, the name for angle 1 and 2 isn't what we learned this chapter, it's what we learned last chapter. But we're going to have to use what we learned last chapter in this chapter to help us find angle relationships. So the angle pair between 1 and 2 are called vertical angles. And if you remember, vertical angles are congruent. And in order to find the measure of angle 1, if I know that this is 118 degrees, angle 1 and that 118 degrees are formed by parallel lines. So angle 1 and 118 degrees are going to be congruent. And since I know angle 1 and angle 1 and 2 are congruent because of vertical angles, then angle 2 is also 118 degrees.